Today we'll be covering all the monsters and content warning. This game is filled with many deadly and unsettling creatures that will harm you and your friends, and hopefully help with creating some great content. But you're here to learn about the monsters, so let's get into it. I'll organize this list from least deadly to if you see them, you're most likely dead. The slime is a harmless creature. It cannot do any damage to the player. However, when it spots the player, it'll quickly run up, grab, and kidnap them, running around their level at high speeds. Eventually, it'll get bored and drop its victim. If you're very unlucky, it could drop you off in a room filled with monsters. But most of the time, it'll just be a mild inconvenience. You can easily know if one is nearby by hearing its little tippy taps. You hear that? So conserve your stamina and quickly run away if it spots you. Don't bother using a shock stick on this guy, as he's unaffected by it. The Screamer. The Screamer looks like a cursed version of Stewie from Family Guy. This guy is small, has a football-shaped head, and a very large mouth. They will run up to any player that's not looking at them and proceed to scream. This scream does not actually harm the player's health, but makes them unable to hear anything for the rest of the round. To make it go away, you just simply have to look at him. It may not be dangerous, but I recommend you avoid this little guy so you can communicate with your teammates. The shock stick will not work on it, but that doesn't matter. As stated before, it'll just run away when you look at it. Snailman, or some people call them zombies for some reason. They have the appearance of an anthropomorphic snail walking bipedal with almost human-like arms. However, the most distinctive thing while looking at it is its gaping mouth ready to take chunks out of you. It's the most common enemy in the old world. These guys are much slower than you, so you can just walk away from them. But be careful if they get too close to you. They will hug you and start biting literal chunks out of you. He clearly didn't look at the hugging manual. The good thing is that you can run and jump continuously to get out of their hug, and it does less damage than most other enemies in the game. Be warned, as these snails can sometimes spawn in large groups, so it can be harder to avoid them when several are around you. If one of them catches you in this situation, it can be lethal, as all of them will try hugging onto you and damage you at the same time. Just take precautions not to be cornered, and practice getting around these enemies so they won't be a threat to you. If you're ever in a pinch, just use the shock stick on them to get away, but I recommend you just save it for later, as there are much more dangerous monsters that you could use it on. The Whisk Man. The Whisk Man is an entity that looks like an electric mixer that got fed up with you and just decided to walk away. It'll attack the player upon spotting them. However, unlike several other enemies, this entity will not actively look for the player. So if you just run around the corner, it could care less about you. Just be careful when the Whisk does spot you. Once you hear it revving up, it'll start charging right after you. It'll come at you in a straight line very quickly, which is actually easy to dodge. It actually has a hard time changing its course once it starts charging at a player. The funniest thing about this enemy, if you dodge it enough times, the Whisk will be embarrassed and run away from you. Unfortunately, if you do get hit by the Whisk, it causes severe injury, not enough to kill you, but if it hits you a second time, you're for sure dead. Unless you aren't paying attention, this guy is mostly harmless. If you're unsure about your dodging ability, you can always stun him. The Starfish. The Starfish is an entity that can be found on the ceilings of the old world. They're not a huge danger if you spot them at first, as you can just walk around the radius in which it captures you. This creature lures in its prey with commonly found items like bones or animal statues, things that the player may be interested in picking up. So before you run up and film any bones, be careful to look up before you do so. This beast is uncommon to come across. However, it's still safer to check rather than not. If you're alone, there is no escape. But if a second player is there, all they have to do is throw an item at it. This will free the player from its grasp. The Bomber. The Bombers are very lethal. Their bodies are covered with bombs that they throw at any player they spot. These bombs will roll on the ground for a moment before detonating, killing everything in its radius. If a player gets close enough to the Bomber, it'll dive towards them and blow itself up. So this is actually the only monster in the game you can technically kill. My advice would be, after you get enough film of the creature, have a player get close to it and run away. It'll just blow itself up and you can move on. The Iron Maiden. The Iron Maiden is basically a weeping angel. This creature only moves when no one is looking at it. If it gets close enough, it'll trap the player within its body. Don't lose hope. You can save your teammates by going to the screen on its hand. There, you must input the correct code on the CAPTCHA. The player has 3 attempts to get it right until the person trapped inside is killed. On the bright side, once your teammate is killed, the Maiden is no longer hostile and will disappear after a little while. It'll also become docile after solving its puzzle. Be careful. There could be more than one of these on the map, with there being multiple ways of evading and possible will escape. This creature is not very dangerous compared to others that may spawn. The shock stick won't work on it, so don't bother trying. This fly guy looks like a deformed Mike Lazowski mixed with a chicken. It has one eye facing forward and two facing back. Like every Redditor, he will attack anyone who shines a light on him. When a light is shined on him, you will see his pupil decrease in size, and he will go into a berserker rage. He'll charge forward and start throwing some mad punches, knocking you around and doing a decent chunk of damage. What really sucks is that he can stun lock you to death, constantly knocking you over until your ultimate demise. The light of your camera can also cause him to attack, so be ready with a shock stick in hand. The ear guy. The ear guy looks malnourished, almost like a skeleton. This creature walks on all fours, and the only defining thing about it is its floppy looking ear. This creature will grab the player and slightly damage them. Just like the snail, you can get away if you struggle. This creature is lured by even the smallest noises. However, it's not very dangerous, due to the fact that it hates loud noises. So just as easily as it's drawn towards you, you can just scream it away. You can also use the shock stick. However, I recommend just yelling at it, as the shock stick can be saved for more dangerous things that come your way. This smiling face creature is actually a robotic dog that has a large gun up on the top of its back. It seems like it would be a friendly little guy, but as soon as it sees you, the light it shines will slowly converge together into a laser pointer. I wonder what it's doing. Within seconds, you are gunned down. The downside to this creature is that it can move while also scanning and shooting, so it's difficult to get away. Although, once out of view, its scanner becomes docile after a few moments. You can also jump over the creature to get away from it, if cornered. Once out of view, it'll search the last known location it's seen you, so don't stick around even though you've gone out of sight. This creature can be stunned by the shock stick, however, it'll eventually get up and immediately be aggroed to players that are still in the area. This gentleman with a knife is called the Ghost Child. Clearly, it's just some random guy with a sheet over his head. Their weapon of choice is a knife. Just like the snail, it'll spawn away from the player, but continuously hunt them down throughout the game. Unlike the snail, it is slightly quicker and has a bit more damage, killing you within 4 to 5 hits. This creature will giggle while near players, giving off an eerie vibe. Once spotted, the child will run at the player, lunging its knife at them haphazardly. Just like the Whisk, its attacks can be avoided by moving around. However, it's a bit more tricky. This is one of the entities I would recommend you use the shock stick, as it's incredibly difficult to get away unharmed. The spider. The spider has a face with several eyes. However, it looks as if it's hollowed out holes, giving an extra creepy vibe. While chasing the player, it'll shoot a large amount of webs at the player from a distance. Once it impacts, the webs will spread out, capturing anything in the vicinity. They are difficult to escape, but not impossible. The spider will focus on trapping its food before killing it, just like a real spider. This creature does a decent amount of damage, killing you within 3 to 4 hits, and there's barely any time between hits, so it's rather easy to be killed if one is not paying attention to their surroundings. I personally recommend staying away from the spider at all costs, and I definitely recommend you use the shock stick, due to how difficult it is to avoid and escape from. Next are the choke legs. These guys will constantly stalk you throughout the level, quickly grabbing a player and forcing them to drop their items, doing a decent amount of damage during this process. The only way to avoid these guys is by shining a light on them, so keep those flashlights charged or stay in well-lit areas. Remember to stay in groups while these guys are around, as there is no escape if it forces you to drop your flashlight. Don't bother trying to stun it, just use your trusty flashlight. This big fella is called the Snatcher. This creature resembles a snake with a long tail. However, it has a larger upper body with big hands. When this creature catches a player, it'll pick them up and toss them at a random direction, knocking them down to about half health. Do be warned, if another player is near when a teammate gets snatched, it'll instead shoot your teammate at you, causing both of you to be damaged. This creature moves slowly at first, but it can move at high speeds quickly. With this creature being able to damage multiple players at once, and being difficult to avoid, it makes it incredibly dangerous. The shock stick can be used, but be careful, as it might grab you before you're able to use it. The Barnacle. The Barnacle is extremely dangerous. It's a hefty, 4-legged round guy with barnacles surrounding most of its body. This creature has multiple ways of attacking the player. If you get too close, it'll smack you. This attack can kill you in about 2 to 3 hits. It can also use a tornado-like attack to suck players and nearby items, putting you in close range for its smack attack. Its last attack is a ranged one. If a player is too far, it'll spit at the player. Once it lands, it'll break into a gas-like substance, only doing a light amount of damage, but also affecting your vision. The Barnacle is extremely deadly in open areas. Try your best to avoid it at all costs. The Flicker. The Flicker is honestly quite terrifying. It's very tall with a single red eye. It has several long, lanky limbs. This creature can spawn anywhere on the map, as long as there's a light bulb there. If a player looks at the Flicker when he spawns, it's over. You're dead. While this happens, players are forced to look at him while the light turns red and tentacles come out, eventually killing every player that was unfortunate enough to look at him. The good news is, the Flicker is a very rare spawn and can be avoided by staying away from lights that spawn on the map. If he does spawn, quickly look away by looking at your feet or turning around. Obviously, the stun stick will not work at all on him. And finally, this enemy is commonly known by delvers as Big Slap. This entity is a huge, human-like creature. It's incredibly dangerous and is in fact the most dangerous enemy currently in the game. Just like the Whisk, it does not actively search for the player. However, if it does happen to spot you, it is highly likely that you will die. This entity is as tall as most ceilings in the game and has incredible speed that the player cannot outrun. If you have been unsuccessful avoiding the creature, it'll run up to you and slap you, hence the name Big Slap. This slap sends the player flying, either instantly killing them or having their health. Within a group of 4, to push your chance of survival, you must scatter. Otherwise, you might all die. Don't waste time trying to shock stick. He's immune. There's a sound that plays when the player is spotted by this creature. Once you hear it, run as far as possible. To the unlucky member of the group, it's likely that one of you must die. There are 17 monsters in total that can spawn in this game so far. However, there are several others within the game files. One looks to have several mechanics and might just be reworked to fit the game better, and others might be new enemies in future updates. I wish you luck on your SpookTube adventure, and hopefully you're better prepared now that you know how to survive every creature currently in the game. I hope you enjoy my future content, check out my Twitch stream, and I'll catch you guys next time. See ya!